In this video, we take a look at the Dawes Act, where the term the $5 Indian came from. But first, here's a word from our sponsor.
Hello, my name is Howard Dorsey. I'm 54 years old. I'm here to talk about my experience with Herbal Results. I was getting sick, so I went to the doctor. They told me that my blood pressure was high, my cholesterol was borderline or high, so I was very sick. Sometimes I thought I was dying at some point. And I ordered a bottle of olive leaf extract. This is how the bottle comes in. And within the first probably week and a half, 2 weeks, I checked my blood pressure and it was back down to normal. It was like 120/80. My cholesterol went down to 125. I definitely believe that olive leaf extract from Herbal Results saved my life. And that's real. I recommend it to everyone in my family, my friends, and we've seen a lot of results in that manner as well.
Shop now at shop.herbalresults.net and check the description for the discount code.
In 1887, the U.S. Congress passed the Dawes Act, named after a senator of Massachusetts. The law regulated land rights on tribal territories in the United States. It converted the Native American traditional system of communal land ownership into the private property land ownership we are all familiar with today. Before it could convert the land into private property, the government had to determine which Native Americans were eligible for property allotments. For this to happen, the U.S. government had to make a criterion of which makes a person Native American and therefore eligible. The United States government also had to make an official list of who was Native American. This list became known as the Daws Rolls.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please take note that the government came up with a criterion that made a person a Native American. It was not based on how long your family was here, if you were here before Columbus and before the Europeans came, but the government determined what made a person a Native American.
The goal of the law was to protect the property of the Native Americans as well as to force their absorption into the American mainstream. A side goal of the act was to open up the remainder of unused Native American tribal reservation land to white settlers for tidy profit.
Okay, again, I repeat, the goal of the act was to open up the remainder of the unused Native American tribal reservation land to white settlers for tidy profit. Basically, to set up the white settlers as landowners, and not necessarily the Native Americans who were there for thousands of years before the Europeans.
The U.S. government came up with the idea of blood quantum laws to determine who were and were not Native Americans. A person's blood quantum was defined as the fraction of their ancestors out of their total ancestors who are documented as full-blood Native Americans. For example, a person with a parent who is full-blood Native American and another parent with no Native ancestry is considered half Native American. For comparison, many tribes and nations did not use blood quantum to decide who was a member of their tribe. One of the many problems with the blood quantum law criteria was that recognized Native Americans who were not considered either full-blood or mixed blood by the test were essentially detribalized. They were stripped of their Native American heritage and displaced from their homelands.
Now, part of the American story that is not told is that many of those who were detribalized were actually black people. Black people who were in this country hundreds of years. Black Native Americans were detribalized and therefore were not entitled to the land that their forefathers had been on for years, for decades, and for centuries. Now, this is the beginning when all black people, no matter if they were native to this land or if they actually came in on slave ships, were determined to be black. You were no longer considered a Native American. If you had black skin, you were considered just black, a color, and not a tribe. And so this actually took away your identity by detribalizing the native black people who were here long before the Europeans. So, in essence, black people who were here, the indigenous native black people, were no longer called by their native names of Cherokee or Seminole or Mohawk, but they were called colored people. So they were known as colored, and the Native Americans were here, they were considered Indian. Even though we all know they were not in India, but they were considered Indians, and the black people were considered colored. Now remember, keep in mind, these people look exactly like the Africans. You could not look at them and distinguish them. And we cannot emphasize enough that many authentic Native Americans were actually black people.
Gregory Smithers, who's an associate professor of history at Virginia Commonwealth University, explained another issue with the new law. He stated, "These opportunistic white men who wanted access to land or food rations. These were people who were more than happy to exploit the Dawes Commission and government agents for $5 and were willing to turn a blind eye to the graft and corruption." In translation, white men with a hunger for more land acquisition paid corrupt government agents $5 to register for the Daws Rolls.
They and their offspring were fraudulently enrolled in Native American tribes and got access to the land allotment and benefits that came with the designation. This is where the term $5 Indian comes from. Many authentic Native Americans didn't trust the U.S. government, and rightfully so, and they chose not to register with the Daws Rolls. The U.S. government never acknowledged these people as Native Americans and excluded them from land benefits and land ownership. Now, I personally believe that the majority of these people were black people, or at that time, so-called colored people. So this is where the confusion comes, that you have black people saying, yeah, we're the Native Americans, but when you have the U.S. government stepping in and reclassifying these people and calling everybody black and everybody a color, that lends itself to the confusion that we find ourselves in today. And I know some people will say, well, how could you say what you personally feel? My personal feeling is based on the treatment of black people in this country from its inception. And we cannot emphasize enough the fact that many authentic Native Americans, I repeat, authentic Native Americans didn't trust the U.S. government, and they did not register. They chose not to register for the Daws Rolls. And many of us have heard the stories about how our families are Native American and we were here first, and that we didn't come in on slave ships. Well, some of us did, some of us didn't. You know, remember, black people come from everywhere, including the United States of America.
Because of the Dawes Act, Native American-owned land decreased from 138 million acres in 1887 to 48 million acres in 1934. 90,000 Native Americans were made landless. The Dawes Act had a horrible permanent effect on the Native Americans. Number one, the law legally preempted the sovereign right of Native Americans to define themselves. Number two, the law implemented the notion of blood quantum as the sole legal criteria for defining Native Americans. Number three, the law institutionalized division between, quote, full bloods and mixed bloods, end quote. Number four, the law detribalized a large segment of the Native American population. Number five, last but not least, the law gave the U.S. government the right to legally sell large tracts of Native American land. President Franklin D. Roosevelt helped pass the U.S. Indian Reorganization Act in 1934. The law reversed portions of the Dawes Act, prohibited any further land allotment, and gave the Native Americans the right to reorganize and form self-governments again.
But the damage had already been done, and the white settlers who got the land for $5 was not about to give it back, nor was there a law in place that enforced them giving it back. And the black Native Americans never received the land that was due, rightfully due them, I might add. Today, the heirs of those $5 Indians still reap the unearned benefits. They also lay claim to tribal citizenship and associated privileges. There is no official estimate of how many $5 Indians actually enrolled. The Daws Rolls remain a murky and inaccurate snapshot of Native American citizenship. In the 2000 census, the number of people claiming Cherokee ancestry was 3 times that of the official tribe enrollment. So again, this is just another example of how we don't need anyone defining us. We know who we are. The government cannot regulate or de-tribalize you, as they say. They can't do that. It is up to us to tell our own story. Just like, remember Elizabeth Warren a few years ago claiming that she was a relative of Pocahontas, but the truth came out and she has no bloodline. She's not a bloodline relative at all. Now, there are so-called black people in this country who know for a fact that their bloodline goes back hundreds of years in this country. People who are considered black, but they know full well that their lineage is Native American. And then there are others who took full advantage of the Daws Rolls and the land allotments, and many people today call them PretINDIANS because they are not native to this country. The Black Excellence and Abundance channel, where black history is every day. Thanks for watching. And please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember, thou art rich.